Throughout the book of Daniel, we find God doing things differently than we would expect. He speaks through Nebuchadnezzar, a pagan king worshiping pagan gods who decrees things that God would never decree. And yet God uses Nebuchadnezzar to communicate scripture to you and I, something we would not normally expect. And then in chapter 5, we find another story where God does something out of the ordinary. We find a pagan king throwing a party. The enemies are surrounding Babylon. The Medes and Persians are at the gates. And what does he do? He throws a drunken party inside. In the middle of the party, a bloodless hand writes on a wall. A hand with no body, no head, just a disconnected hand writing on the wall. The king and his lords are terrified and perplexed. So the queen comes in, and here's her words in Daniel 5, verse 10. The queen, because of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banqueting hall. And the queen said, O king, live forever. Let not your thoughts alarm you or your color change. There is in your kingdom a man in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. In the days of your father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, were found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father, made him chief of the magicians, enchanters, Chaldeans, and astrologers. Because an excellent spirit, knowledge and understanding to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve problems were found in this Daniel. So let Daniel be called, and he will tell you the interpretation. Daniel's called, and he comes in. Now, if you and I were writing the story, what we would expect to happen is Daniel would first of all correct all the errors in what the queen said about him. No, I don't have the spirit of multiple gods in me. There's only one God. No, I don't have the wisdom of all these pagan gods you worship in me. No, I'm not an astrologer. I'm not a magician. I'm not any of these things of Babylon. But you know what? He doesn't say any of that, what you and I would expect to happen. He doesn't enter into controversy or argue a theological debate in this case. He speaks to the heart of what the king is concerned about. He interprets the dream, he interprets the writing, which literally means Babylon is falling that night, that the king and his people will be destroyed. The king then promotes Daniel, puts on him royal robes and crown, and promotes him to second in the kingdom. Now, if it were me, I would be turning that down, right? The enemies are at the gates, they're coming in, they're taking over. I don't want to be any one of the rulers in the land of Babylon. But Daniel, throughout the whole book, is guided by prayer and God's direction. To do things that we would not expect, to do things that spiritually we wouldn't think would be the way to go, that logically wouldn't be the way to go. And yet, because Daniel had such a close connection with God, at each and every step God honored him. And on this roller coaster he lived throughout the book of Daniel. The highs and the lows that are repeated over and over. Daniel always rises to the top because he trusts and follows God, and God's leading in his life. Today, maybe your life feels like a roller coaster. Maybe you're on a high, maybe you're on a low. There is one thing the book of Daniel challenges us to do, and that is to follow God and his guidance in our lives. It may be unexpected, it may be different than what we would have thought. But if we will faithfully seek God, he will guide us in unexpected ways. And in the end, he will always bring us back to the top.